Good evening and welcome to this AZ Votes 2025 special edition of Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. Tonight, we feature a debate between candidates running in a special Republican primary election for Arizona's 7th congressional district. The seat was held by the late Raul Grijalva, a Democrat who represented the Southern Arizona district for more than 20 years. Congressman Grijalva died earlier this year after a battle with lung cancer. We heard from the candidates in the Democratic primary on Tuesday night. It's the Republicans' turn, though, tonight, and these candidates now will be given 60 seconds to reply to questions, and there will be opportunities for rebuttals. Let's introduce tonight's candidates in alphabetical order. Daniel Gutierrez, a small businessman who ran against Congressman Grijalva in the 2024 election, and Jorge Rivas, a Tucson restaurant owner. We should note we invited candidate Jimmy Rodriguez. He initially agreed to participate, but today declined our offer. Let's get underway with our opening statements, and in alphabetical order, we start with Daniel Gutierrez.
Hi, friends. I'm Daniel Gutierrez. I want to thank you all for having me here. Congratulations, Mr. Jorge, for making it this far. This election is about integrity, and this debate is about eliminating candidates that lack the integrity to lead. I'm the only Tucson native running to ensure that your voice is heard. Okay? I will set up an office so that you will be represented in Southern Arizona better than you have been in the last 22 years. The thing that makes me different is, anyways, my office will be your office.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. And now the opening statement from Jorge Rivas.
Good afternoon. My name is Jorge Rivas. I am a proud naturalized United States citizen. I migrated to this country from El Salvador as a child during the 1980s, the Civil War in El Salvador. I know that I came to the greatest country on earth, which has given me the opportunity to live the American dream. I have a great wife, three young men, 3 sons that God blessed us with. All 3 of them graduated from college. We think, and I know, that my family and I, we represent an example of the living American dream. We are the living example of the American dream. Why? Because we came here, we work hard, stay out of trouble, start our own business, and make sure that we have done the right thing. And now I want to use some of my time to help other people that are suffering and that are in trouble. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Gentlemen, let's get things started. Daniel, we'll start with you. And a simple question, why are you running for Congress in a district that is about 80% registered Democrat?
Well, last time I actually got almost 100,000 votes. I have name recognition, and I was born in CD7, live in CD7, own 2 small businesses in CD7, and employ the residents of CD7. So I decided to run because I care about my community.
Jorge, same question to you. Again, this is a heavily Democratic district that sent Congressman Grijalva back to Congress numerous times. Why are you running for this office?
I am running for this office because I believe that is in critical need of great leadership, and I think I bring that to the table. Not only have I worked very hard to achieve what I have, but also God has blessed me with knowledge and skills and wisdom, and I wanted to use that to help my fellow citizens, because I think for so many years we had someone representing this district that didn't really care, or it was not up to the task to do what was necessary. And I will do everything necessary to make sure not only I do the right thing for the district, but also that I will stand up. I will not be afraid. I will not be scared to do what is right and make sure that the life of the people of the district will be better in the future.
I need for you to respond to how Congressman Grijalva either didn't care or didn't do right by the district.
The number of people that we see now on the streets, homeless people, the number of the people that are suffering, the great number of people that are dying of all the fentanyl and drug that is coming in. No one did anything about it, especially the congressman didn't do anything significant to make that stop. And I will make that to stop.
Daniel, do you blame Congressman Grijalva for any homeless issues, any fentanyl issues that hit District 7?
I blame the homeless issues on our current leadership in the mayor's office, the Board of Supervisors. But Grijalva, what he did was he failed to act on our border, which allowed a lot of the drugs to come in. And it got really worse while he has been ill. So, you know, I cut him that year break off, but this has been going on for years and years. So I do agree with that. So.
Okay, and you talked about immigration. Let's get to immigration. The Trump administration certainly has a policy and certainly has been enacting things that many courts are finding illegal. That aside, do you agree with the way that President Trump and Republicans on Capitol Hill are handling immigration?
I believe they're doing an amazing job on it. We, as you and I spoke about before, they were pouring in across our southern border by the thousands, just being picked up at the end of the wall, brought over and released into our country everywhere. So I believe we need to remove them faster than we brought them in.
So you agree with the way things are being handled right now by the Trump administration?
Absolutely.
Jorge, what about you?
I think that the last administration did not do their job. And President Trump, the only thing that he's doing differently is that he's enforcing the laws that we have for so many years. The same laws that were applied by President Obama and many other presidents after him. So President Trump is not doing anything different. He's just being responsible. He's doing the job that we hired him to do. So for that reason, I give him credit for standing up and being a man of the word, of his word, that he was going to take care of business. So I feel that he's doing the right thing by enforcing the laws and throwing away every single person that has a crime, every person that belongs to a gang member organization. They should be thrown out as fast as possible, just the way he's doing.
What about those who aren't part of organized crime and aren't a criminal? Those who, for example, appear for asylum hearings as requested, as required, and when they appear, their cases are dropped and they are immediately put in custody. They are detained and they are deported.
The failure, or what happened, is that the past administration, the Biden administration, they used the wrong code or the wrong system to let so many people in. 95% of these people do not qualify under amnesty, because they don't come from a country that had a civil war or a war between two countries. They're here because they're hungry, they don't have no jobs, and that's a whole different story. We cannot be letting the people stay just because they think that they can. We have to follow the law.
Okay, but if they follow the law, if they do as required and appear for immigration or asylum hearings and have their case immediately dismissed, and thus the minute they walk out, sometimes go down the street, they are apprehended. Is that what you want to see?
Well, I kind of was a little shocked listening to Jorge over here, because I saw him on another article where they did an interview on him, and he was against President Trump's deportation. So now that he's all supporting President Trump, I'm a little shocked on that. Again, where I stand on this is the law must be enforced. It was ignored when they came in, and we need to remove anyone who came in here illegally. And at the southern border, they all came across where there wasn't a port of entry, so they entered illegally. They need to be removed.
Okay, so it's okay. The process that we're seeing in federal courthouses right now, you're okay with that?
What the federal court is doing?
Yes.
No, I don't think the federal court should be getting into this. This needs to be dealt with the President of the United States and his administration.
Jorge, I want you to respond to Daniel basically saying that you've changed your position.
No, sir. I've been supporting President Trump and the policies since he came into office. He probably misunderstood what I said, but he has the right to his own opinion. I know who I am, and I know what I stand for, and I have a record of proving that I've been supporting the Republican Party and President Trump all along.
Another aspect of immigration that has changed with the Trump administration is that enforcement is okay in schools, churches, civic places, public civic places. You okay with that?
If it's within the United States and the laws of the United States apply to it, so be it. We cannot pick and choose where we enforce the laws. We cannot pick and choose when we enforce the laws. If we do that, then we'll become a banana republic, and many thousands of people like myself, or millions of people who come to the United States for hundreds of years, they come here because it's a country of laws, and that's how we're going to keep it, and that's what I'm going to work on.
Daniel, churches, schools, okay by you?
The churches and schools, arresting them in the churches or schools?
Yes, detaining and deporting, finding people in churches, schools, public places where they were protected in the past.
I don't think we should be going into the churches or the schools at all. I don't think law enforcement should be going into our schools or our churches. I believe they should be sanctuary areas. So.
Interesting. All right, last point on this. Deporting Venezuelans, there's a temporary protected status program that the previous administration certainly used. Deporting the Venezuelans, though, that are under that program, what if these people are being deported back to oppressive governments and societies? And many see Venezuela as that kind of a system. How do you feel about that?
Well, the ones that are being sent back to Venezuela that I've seen and I understand and my knowledge of is they're criminals that should have never come here in the first place. I don't blame the administration that's doing this and sending them back. I blame the previous administration that let them come here.
Okay, but as far as the idea of non-violent criminals being sent back who came here to escape oppression, being sent back to that oppression, you're saying what?
Again, I don't have enough information on that. I don't know whether they were dangerous or not. I haven't looked into any of their records. It's not my job to look into their records. It's up to reporters in the court system or the administration to look in their records. I trust what our administration is doing right now because they are trying to do what's best for we the people.
I saw a sign, Jorge, that read, deporting good immigrants back to dictatorships is cruel. You agree?
There are many things that are cruel in this country or in this world. The United States does not have the responsibility to go around making sure that every country in the world is peaceful and as smooth as it should be. I think the United States has a responsibility to take care of the citizens of this country and to make sure that this country does not become cruel or a dictatorship or whatever they might want to call it. So we have to work on our citizens, we have to work on our laws to make sure that we protect our citizens before we are going around criticizing other governments.
Okay, so basically, if you escape a dictatorship and you come here not by the proper methods, back to the dictatorship you go.
Well, people can apply and they can follow the proper steps. But we cannot just automatically assume because someone says that a country is dictatorship or oppressor, everybody will be able to come in because, that's not the way it is.
Yeah, you agree with that, Daniel?
Yeah.
You do agree,
with
okay.
it.
The tax and spending bill, the Senate now has it, the House passed it. You would be in the House should you succeed to this district seat. How would you have voted, especially considering some of the criticism involved? Not all Republicans were behind it, most were, but in the Senate it's going to get a whole different makeup. How would you have voted on this?
I would have voted for the bill. There's a lot of good things in that bill. For example, in 2017, Trump put in a tax break for small businesses so that we could start. Prior to that, I was working for somebody else. President Trump put that tax break in there, and I started Butierrez Painting. I built Butierrez Painting up, and then I bought the old company I used to work for. That tax program is in that thing. There's a lot of other good programs in that bill just like that. And I think there's a lot of fear-mongering going on with that bill.
What do you make of the bill, Jorge? Do you think it's a good idea? Would you have voted for it if you had been in Congress?
I would, and I know a lot of people are talking about Medicare and Medicaid being having so many people left out of the system, but I think it is not so much about that. It is more of the being streamlined because I know there is a lot of fraud. Organizations or individuals have been stealing left and right from Medicare and Medicaid. So I think that the Trump administration is just making sure that the money is being used properly for the people that need help and not necessarily just being out there where anyone can take it and just abuse it like it has been for so many years. Because if that keeps happening, then it's going to run out of money, and then no one's going to get the benefit that they need.
The bill as it stands could mean thousands of Arizonans could lose their health insurance.
Well, when I get there, I will do something about it.
What would you do about it?
I will make sure that the people that need it, they will get the benefits that they do deserve.
Okay, can that be done and also address waste, fraud, and abuse?
Anything can be done when you have the will and the power to do it. Anything is possible.
All right, is it possible to keep these people in Arizona? If these people in Arizona lose their health insurance, the ripple effect will be significant, and everyone from Republicans and Democrats in the state are a little concerned about it. Are you concerned about it?
No, I'm not, because it hasn't happened yet. I don't believe it's going to happen. What you're talking about is what some people believe is going to happen if the bill's passed. First off, the bill hasn't passed, so no one can say that it is happening.
Right.
They believe it's going to happen, and that's part of that fear-mongering that I keep hearing about from people. There's a lot of things that people are saying are part of that bill that are not part of that bill. He's not taking away the Medicaid. He's not taking away the health care. I had a friend come over to my house, works at the VA. She thought they were going to fire her. She was going to lose her job. This was weeks ago. She shows up about 5 days ago, all excited. She didn't lose her job. They only got rid of the people that were AWOL, that weren't coming into work, and the interior designers at the VA, because people telling them how to set up their office. That's who they got rid of, nobody else.
Back to Medicaid. Steve Bannon, who is no shrinking liberal here, I mean, this is a conservative's conservative, or definitely on the right side. His quote, "Tons of working class folks are on Medicaid. They're working. They're not asking for a handout." Former Governor Brewer, Republican. If federal dollars disappear, the state is left with a handful of bad choices, cutting eligibility, cutting services, cutting payments to providers, or raising taxes. Are they both wrong?
Again, we got to see what happens. None of this has happened yet. These are people's opinion, and everybody's entitled to an opinion. I would rather not buy into the fear-mongering and see what happens, because we're hearing a lot of stuff, and a lot of it's fear-mongering.
Do you think it's all fear-mongering, Jorge?
I will go back a little bit. I will go back to the previous administration when they wasted so much money, sent it to so many countries that, for example, they sent $20 million to Iraq for a Sesame Street show, and so many other examples that I can give you. Also, they sent, what, $400 billion to Ukraine to kill people? Why didn't we say that $400 billion and say, okay, half of this will go to the Medicare and Medicaid? I mean, let's hold people responsible and accountable for their action. I think that's why I'm running, because I'm tired of those people in Washington doing whatever they want, left and right, and nobody's holding them accountable.
What do you make of the president's tariff program?
President Trump is a deal maker, and he's making the best deal for this country. And I feel that in about 5 or 10 years from now, he's going to be held as a wise man for having done so many things that he's doing right now. I know he's being criticized, but at the end, all of us are going to be winners.
Are you concerned that using tariffs to make deals and yet not getting those deals through is a possibility, and what it would mean to business, including your business?
Yeah, I mean, there might be a little painful here and there for a few months, but at the end, I'm almost certain, I'm almost 100% that President Trump will come out on top.
What do you make of tariffs, Daniel?
I can tell you, because I've spoken to I've been down to the border. I've been to all the ports. I've spoke with the Port Authority. I've spoken with businesses in Nogales, industrial business that bring in produce and ship out produce. They told me that America did $40 billion last year. So this is a big industry, and our ports are very important. These individuals, I did a roundtable with them, said this is going to cost them a lot of money, but it needs to be done. They're just grateful it's President Trump doing it and not Harris, because he is a negotiator. But President Trump's not the first one to say, hey, we need tariffs. All the other presidents have said we need tariffs. Trump's just the one that was brave enough to do it.
Okay, so were you for tariffs before President Trump got into office?
Oh, yeah.
You were for tariffs?
Yeah.
To this extent?
I talked to some people before. Well, we knew it was going to be an extent because we've got to, it's a negotiation. That's all tariffs are. They're a negotiation so that it's fair across the board. And someone had to do it. Someone needed to negotiate because we're being ripped off.
Is there concern, and again, a lot of the Trump economic policy is to get jobs back to America, get manufacturing back to America, quit sending it overseas. Is there concern that those jobs never will appear in America if for no other reason than automation and these sorts of things that have moved the job market and employment in certain areas beyond what we used to know? Is that a concern for you?
A little bit, but then again, we know that in the United States, we're so blessed that we have so many people that are very creative. And a lot of the new things that are coming out into the world are created right here in the United States. So let's make sure that new jobs that are being created in different sectors do not leave the country. You know, that we protect those jobs and make sure that they don't leave, they stay here, and they help people that are coming out from school, you know, kids, college graduates. Maybe the ones that already left will be hard for those jobs to come back. But I am very hopeful that with the creativity of the American citizen, we'll be okay in the future.
Oh, but what Jorge describes could very possibly mean higher prices, could very possibly mean an increase in inflation. Do you agree with that? Do you think that's a valid point, or do you just disagree?
I actually just did I just had a phone call with a gentleman that gets his steel from Mexico. He brings it in. It's a better product, and it's a cheaper, more affordable product. And right now, what just happened with the tariffs and stuff, he's really concerned because he's trying to build affordable housing up by Douglas, and he's trying to get people the government to get involved to buy these houses, and he's concerned. I told him, like I told you before, we got to wait and see what happens.
Okay, all right. Last question, gentlemen, and you're running in the Republican primary here, and so Republican voters are who you're after in this first go-around. I'm going to ask your opinion of President Trump's job performance, and is there anything he has done? Jorge, we'll start with you. Is there anything he has done that you oppose?
Anything that he has done that I oppose. I do not oppose of anything that he has done so far. Many things that he has been doing so far are the things that he was campaigning on. He said, "Oh, I will do this. I will secure the border. I will lower, the amount of drugs coming in." So he's working on all the things that he said that he was going to work on. And I know he's not perfect. He's a human being like anybody else. He might make mistakes here and there, but we cannot hold him, accountable for every little thing. So I do support him.
Last word on that. Anything he's done that you oppose?
Everything he's done, it's a promise is made, promise is kept. I haven't seen him do anything that I oppose of yet, as far as this, what he's done. Right now, he's just trying to keep his promises that he made, and I think he's doing an amazing job on that.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. Good conversation. Thank you, candidates. And it's now time for closing statements. And going in alphabetical order, we begin with Daniel Gutierrez.
Hi, everybody. Again, thank you for having me here. And I want to leave you with this. I am the only candidate in this race that actually lives in CD7, grew up in CD7, and has employed hundreds of people from CD7. I understand this district from one end to the other. I spent much of my time in Douglas, Yuma, up in Nogales. None of the other candidates in this race have gone and met anyone in these areas. So I ask you for your vote. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And now the closing statement from Jorge Rivas.
I do ask you for your vote. And the gentleman here sitting right next to me, he ran last time against a gentleman, the ex-congressman, who couldn't walk, who couldn't read, who couldn't talk, and finally he passed away. And even though that this gentleman ran unopposed, he only got a very small percentage of the vote. So I please ask you not to waste your vote anymore and give me a chance. I am a fighter. I will do what I'm supposed to do. I will take care of every single problem that comes across. And with your help, with your vote, and God's blessing, I will do what is necessary. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Candidates, thank you so much for participating in tonight's debate. We appreciate it. That's it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.